Froggy Fresh, also known as Tyler Cassidy, was a parody rapper who was pretty popular in the early 2010s. Over his career, he posted three main studio albums: Moneymaker Reloaded, Dream Team, and Escape from Hood Mountain. These records describe the happenings and adventures of Froggy Fresh and his best friend Moneymaker Mike, usually as they battle supernatural characters or his arch nemesis James. The focus of this video is not regarding his YouTube channel, but instead the lore of the Froggy Fresh universe. If you'd like a more meta-analysis of the Froggy Fresh YouTube channel, Wavy Websurf posted a video about this back in 2018, a couple months after Froggy Fresh's final studio album. As far as I can tell, this video is pretty much up to date and not much has changed since its release, so I'd recommend checking it out. Without further ado, I present you Froggy Fresh Power Levels. The first thing we need to consider when looking for an objective answer to the question of who the strongest characters in Froggy Fresh's songs are, we need to establish a criteria which defines power. For this ranking, power will be defined as combat potential. For example, a great deal of songs are about basketball. In fact, there's probably more songs about basketball than anything else in Fresh's discography. Regardless, for the most part, any events that happen within a game of basketball will not be counted. There are a few exceptions to this rule, where I will analyze parts of a song mainly about basketball, but these exceptions will be explained later down the line. Another important consideration we should take is acknowledging the chronology of the Froggy Fresh universe. If we have an accurate sense of when songs and events happen, the rankings will be more accurate as they account for personal growth between key fights. As far as I can tell, Froggy Fresh's discography is mostly chronological. For example, when we first hear of James, it is on the third track of Moneymaker Reloaded, the first album. Likewise, the Halloween and Stolen Bike saga are spaced chronologically between all three albums. The only discrepancy I can find in the otherwise straightforward chronology of the universe is in the song Go-Kart Love, in which Froggy Fresh actually dies. This might just be a joke, but in no other song does Froggy Fresh die, so I'm assuming it is canon and placing it at the end of the timeline. This doesn't have an incredible impact on the power rankings, but it is something to make note of. First song on Moneymaker Reloaded, as well as the song that made Froggy Fresh famous, is The Baddest. This song is important because it gives us two possible ways to analyze the FFU. The first approach is to take everything Froggy Fresh says as gospel and the undeniable truth. What I mean is that when we hear Froggy Fresh say he could beat you up even if you had infinity knives, we assume he genuinely has the power to do so. This approach would be quite problematic, however, as some of his feats would make him the most powerful human alive if we took them at face value. Due to this, the second approach, where we treat Froggy Fresh as an unreliable narrator, will be the one I take. I will use my best judgment when evaluating Froggy Fresh's self-acclaimed feats. For example, I'm going to argue that he is lying when he says he could beat you up even if you had infinity knives. But I think it could be possible he had to fight for his whole life. Therefore, most of this song can be disregarded as inflated boasting. What we can deduce from this video is the existence of Froggy Fresh himself, which I will place here in a neutral power level for now. Haters Wanna Be Me, as well as Coolest Guys, are similarly flexing songs like The Baddest. However, the circumstances portrayed in Haters Wanna Be Me are more believable. For one, the lyric, "Have you ever been to the county fair? I rode the fireball and I wasn't even scared," is likely true, as well as killing an anaconda with his fist because it is so absurd and specific to have been fabricated. Most of the other songs on this track can be ignored for the sake of power ranking. These include Girl Work It, Stolen Bikes, Denzel Washington, Me and Daniel Tosh, Halloween, Christmas, Same Old Kid, and ER. These are all wonderful songs and I recommend you listen to them. However, they don't have any implications on the strength of the characters. Some may argue songs like Stolen Bikes are important because they build upon the lore of the Froggy Fresh universe, but in my listen through of these songs, they did not contain any significant combat details to analyze, so I left them out. If you'd like a video analyzing the complete lore of the FFU, let me know in the comments section. The next notable song on Moneymaker Reloaded is Best Friends. In this song, James kidnaps Mike and Froggy Fresh has to rescue him. In the process of saving his best friend, Froggy Fresh knocks out James with one punch and brings Mike home. The reason I consider a song like Best Friends to be canon and completely true is that it follows a narrative rather than testimonial structure. This song introduces two new characters of importance, James and Mike. We don't really know how strong Mike is yet, but we can deduce James is stronger than Mike but weaker than Froggy Fresh, due to the fact that he kidnapped Mike, however he got knocked out by one punch from Froggy Fresh. A song of major importance on this album is The Fight. This song introduces two new bad guys, Bulldog and Snake Eyes. I want to make a note, I won't be including one-off characters shown in later stories unless they have something unique about them. In most songs, the one-off villains get beat and forgotten about, so they aren't too complicated to the wider lore. But Bulldog and Snake Eyes are different, compared to a character like Vanny Velvet, who is pretty generic. Once James sends the crooks to attack our heroes, the battle seems pretty even between Froggy Fresh and Mike versus Bulldog and Snake Eyes. Although Fresh and Mike eventually do a special move and defeat their adversaries, the battle itself was pretty close, with Froggy Fresh being shot and Mike getting stabbed. On top of this, Bulldog was described as being the toughest bad guy that there ever was. I think this is accurate because unlike James, Bulldog was actually able to injure Froggy Fresh, whereas James just got knocked out. This places Bulldog above James, but below Froggy Fresh due to the fact that they lost. Likewise, Mike was able to beat Snake Eyes overall, so he's definitely stronger than him, but he is likely still weaker than James. This leaves our chart looking like this. Just to reinforce my earlier assumption that Mike is weaker than James, in the song Mike's Mom, James almost kills Mike before Mike could even fight him. So this pretty much confirms that Mike is weaker than James. That covers all the songs in Moneymaker Reloaded. As of now, the chart looks like this: Froggy Fresh on top, followed by Bulldog, James, Mike, and finally Snake Eyes in the bottom. The second album by Froggy Fresh, Dream Team, contains 12-ish songs, and most of them are important. The ones of no significance are You Gon' Get There, Friday the 13th, and the remixes of Halloween 2 and Push Me. Anyways, the album begins with the song Dunked On. I know I said earlier the basketball songs won't be analyzed in this comparison, but the reason I included it here was because of the introduction of another staple character to the FFU, Big Blue. We don't know exactly where Big Blue fits in quite yet, but Dunked On is his character's debut. The first real song to look at is Stolen Bikes 2. Now, for the most part, the song is a typical fight setup. Froggy Fresh has beef with James, so they clash. What is notable about this fight is the introduction of spinach. Now, it's only appeared in Stolen Bikes 2, but it seems that eating spinach enhances a human's combat potential, as both Froggy Fresh and James eat spinach during their fight and power up. What else is notable about the song is that it ends in a stalemate, so it's possible James has been getting stronger as time goes on. Street Rangers is one of those songs where there's a one-off character that doesn't really make a return. Predator is the main antagonist of Street Rangers, but what is cool is in this song, Mike actually has to defeat Predator on his own. This shows that he has some capability when it comes to fighting. The Street Ranger suits are also an important thing in this song. Like Spinach, I think they enhance combat abilities, due to them being based on Power Ranger suits. Also, if they didn't help, why would they wear them? Maybe it's just a uniform, but I don't know. Halloween 2 pits Froggy Fresh and Mike, sort of, against Mike Myers. Now in the first Halloween, Mike and Froggy Fresh never really fight Mike Myers/James. They just get scared and run away from him. In Halloween 2, Froggy Fresh actually fights Mike Myers, except this time it actually is Mike Myers, and not James dressed up as him. The reason I brought up chronology earlier was for this exact moment. Before this song, there's a training montage where Froggy Fresh, traumatized by the events of Halloween 1, practices his combat skills in case James attacks him again. This likely means Froggy Fresh is a fair bit more powerful than he was before the time skip. In fact, he is powerful enough he is able to defeat Mike Myers by using the Force. We don't really see a repeated use of the Force for the rest of Froggy Fresh's discography, so I won't really be considering it in comparisons, not that it actually matters. Mike Myers actually cuts Froggy Fresh's hand off in the fight, so he's likely pretty powerful to be able to do so. Therefore, I'm going to place him right below Froggy Fresh, but still above the rest of the cast. Reindeer Games is our next song, and that has a couple of important parts. For one, Mike shoots James in the ass with a slingshot. So maybe Mike is more of a marksman type character, like Usopp, who is physically not that strong, but is better with ranged weapons. Also, Fresh describes James as dragging a big bag that Big Blue couldn't even lift, which implies that James is stronger than Big Blue. I'm going to make a tentative placement of Big Blue as weaker than James, but likely stronger than Mike. There's no evidence for this exactly, but it seems Froggy Fresh considers Big Blue to be pretty strong, so he's probably more powerful than Mike. James actually wins in this song, but it's really only because he had a gun. One of my favorite storylines is told in the songs Fun Trip and Push Me. Essentially, Mike gets addicted to a drug called Fun Trip and becomes James' lackey. Froggy Fresh decides that he must save Mike from James once again, so he attacks James's house while Mike is overdosing on Fun Trip. An amazing feat of combat potential is displayed here, when Froggy Fresh deflects bullets with a sword, as well as cutting a gun in half with the same sword. He cuts James' legs and rescues Mike, once again coming out on top over James. The fact that he was able to deflect bullets as well as cut a metal gun in half with a sword would put him higher in the tier list if he wasn't already on top. Like I said earlier, Go-Kart Love is weird because technically Froggy Fresh gets beat up and dies at the end of it. But I'm not really gonna consider that for this video because for one, he's beat up by random characters with no names, as well as him probably being past his prime as it falls at the end of the timeline. That wraps up the analysis of all the songs on Dream Team. So at the current ranking, Froggy Fresh is still on top, followed by Mike Myers, Bulldog, James, Big Blue, Moneymaker Mike, and finally Snake Eyes. Predator would technically fall at last place here, but like I said, I'm not keeping track of characters like him. A lot of the songs in Froggy Fresh's final album, Escape from Hood Mountain, don't tell us a lot about the power of the characters in the universe. It introduces a few characters, but only of its roughly 18 songs are 7 important to this list. First up is Street Rangers 2, which introduces Gator Jones, another friend of Froggy Fresh. In it, Big Blue and James are going to blow up a school and a character named Young Rob. So they, the Street Rangers, Fresh, Mike, and Gator Jones are sent to save the day. Froggy Fresh can't change into his suit in time though, so just Mike and Gator Jones have to defeat James and Big Blue alone. In the fight, James is dressed as the Joker and Big Blue is disguised as Venom. Gator Jones, the Black Ranger, gets bodied in this fight. Big Blue blinds and binds him with webs, and James just starts wailing on him, so clearly he is weaker than them. However, in a surprising turn of events, Moneymaker Mike decimates James with a powerful axe blow to his back. So maybe Mike is stronger than James now. However, this victory is Pyrrhic, as although James and Big Blue are defeated, they forgot to untie young Rob and defuse the bomb, who promptly blows up. I didn't realize this at first because just the audio makes it sound like they saved the day, but upon inspecting the video for Street Rangers 2 was the truth actually revealed. This surprisingly shifts the balance of power on this chart, placing Big Blue and James below Mike, whereas Gator Jones will fall below both James and Big Blue, but still above Snake Eyes and other one-off characters. Another favorite song of mine from Froggy Fresh is Good Guy's Shoes. This song also has huge significance, if not the most, when it comes to the Froggy Fresh universe. For one, it introduces the Good Guy's Shoes, a pair of shoes possessed by the evil spirit of Doug, the Irish thug. Whenever someone wears the Good Guy's Shoes, they get possessed by the spirit, but also become arguably stronger. They sort of function like the black suit in Spider-Man, where most power is attained by becoming evil. In the song, Froggy Fresh, the strongest character we have known up to this point, wears the Good Guy's Shoes. Keep in mind that this is post-use of force, post-time skip Froggy Fresh, and he goes on an absolute rampage, robbing James and Big Blue. However, in the end, Froggy Fresh, enhanced by the Good Guy's Shoes, is defeated by a new character named Giant Jimmy. Jimmy stabbed Froggy Fresh 50 times and knocked the shoes clean off his feet, or arguably the other way around. This firmly places Giant Jimmy at the top of the chart, even above Froggy Fresh. There's not really much more information of importance after Good Guy's Shoes, but if you want to know, I'm going to briefly go over the rest of the album as well as tie up some loose ends. Stolen Bikes 3 features Froggy Fresh beating up one of those one-off characters named Venny Velvet, so I guess I'd place him at the bottom near Predator. Likewise, Froggy Fresh defeats James in this song once again, but due to the fact that he is already above James, not much changes. The Fight 2 places Froggy Fresh against James again, except this time Froggy Fresh actually loses, although it could be argued he only lost because James had a gun and Froggy Fresh didn't have his sword this time. I won't count this victory as hugely significant either, mainly because the fight record between Froggy Fresh and James is at 4-1 I think at this point, so it wouldn't change much anyways. And finally, the song Giant Jimmy tells us Jimmy is 6'6", 150 pounds, and causes 96% of all injuries. Whether that means in basketball or real life, I'm not sure. Likewise, the police say they can't stop Giant Jimmy, so he must be insanely powerful. None of this would change his position on top, however. There's one last song I haven't talked about, called Jimmy Butler's Your Father. It's a single, and it's about basketball, so I don't really consider it important to this video. The final thing to consider before finalizing the chart is Bulldog. Now I'm still sticking to my guns with the theory that he is the toughest bad guy that there ever was, which may seem foolish. How could he be stronger than Giant Jimmy? It's my belief that he isn't, but that doesn't mean he isn't the strongest bad guy. I think bad guy is an affiliation, maybe like a gang or perhaps a mindset. I don't think Giant Jimmy is part of the bad guy mindset, as after he defeated Froggy Fresh he bowed and left, a sign of respect. Likewise, he seems to be a friend of James, but not necessarily in his gang. We've never heard of him before the basketball game, and he has no involvement in the Fun Trip cartel. For the same reasons, I think Mike Myers is technically a bad guy, but not in the definition of the FFU. Mike Myers is evil by nature, not by choice, which sets him apart from Bulldog. On top of this, I think it's more likely the bad guys could be the name of James's gang. This is our final power ranking chart. Giant Jimmy on top, Froggy Fresh second, followed by Mike Myers, Bulldog, Moneymaker Mike, James, Big Blue, Gator Jones, Snake Eyes, and finally Predator and other one-off characters at the bottom. Now I could leave it at that, but I think it could be a fun theory to craft the absolute strongest existence possible in the Froggy Fresh universe. In other words, the apex predator. First, we need to take the strongest raw power output we know of, Giant Jimmy. Next, we need to remember all the enhancements we've seen throughout the lore. For this instance, I'm not going to consider the Giant Jimmy shoes canon, but if you want a special video analyzing the theoretical Giant Jimmy shoes, also let me know in the comment section. Now, back to theory crafting. If Giant Jimmy was to wear the Street Ranger suit, good guy shoes, and finally eat a can of spinach to top it off, I don't really know how powerful he would be. Could he beat a character like Goku? One Punch Man? I'm not really sure, but let me know what you think. Needless to say, that would be our top spot. Honorary position 0, Giant Jimmy. Post good guy shoes, Street Ranger suit, and spinach. Thank you all so much for watching. If I missed anything important in this video, let me know. There's a possibility I overlooked some obscure detail or pieces of lore when researching for this video, so if any of my positions seem off or wrong, I would be grateful if you could comment and tell me why. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and I encourage you to go listen to Froggy Fresh's discography if you haven't already.